Hey GenderqueerChat, it is Monday, this is Matt, and this week's topic is how do you deal with gendered things? The examples being clothes shopping, toilets or public restrooms, and filling out forms. So the way that I deal with gendered things most typically is to avoid getting into situations where I will be faced with a rigid gendered question or outcome or confrontation. I feel uncomfortable in situations where gender is pointed out and you are forced to choose or walk through a certain door or tick a certain box, as many genderqueer people would be. And the reason for that is because society doesn't like to accommodate for people who exist in a space that or doesn't even recognise that there are people legitimately and put infrastructure in place or processes in place to allow for people who don't identify as strictly male or female or don't identify with the gender binary. That goes without saying, but I said it anyway. Yeah, in regards to toilets, I use the male toilet, and for the most part that's fine. I'd feel pretty uncomfortable and probably pretty inappropriate if I walked into a female toilet, unless it was in a gay bar, which is cool, if they allow that. But if I had my preference, I would go for, when available, a unisex or a gender-neutral bathroom. The problem with this that I've found is, one, it's really hard to find a unisex or gender-neutral bathroom. Two, when you do find one, they usually also have a secondary function or primary function even of being a disabled toilet or a parenting room. And so obviously I'd be conscious of that and feel like maybe it would be inappropriate for me to be there, and there would be people there needing to use that space that were more deserving or needing to than I was. And three, what were they counting? Three, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, gender-neutral bathrooms are kind of a logistical nightmare anyway, the way I see it. I mean, the reason that we make bathrooms and put them in that strict sex categories is that society thinks it must be okay that men all go to the toilet together and women all go to the toilet together, and that there shouldn't be any intermingling. I mean, that's what the basis of it is. So if you're going to have a unisex bathroom that was going to accommodate more than one person, then you're faced with that problem that legitimately people with all different kinds of body types, male, female, otherwise, would or could be using that space. And I don't see how that would make anyone less comfortable or more safe or anything like that. So I think gender-neutral bathrooms, unless you're talking about, one facilities for one person only, is a logistical nightmare. And I don't see it happening that there's going to be more gender-neutral spaces available just for that reason. So probably the way it is, or at least the way I experience it in my city, where there's disabled or parenting rooms that can also be used by other people, and so they're not gender specific, that's probably as good as you're going to get, unfortunately. Yeah, I understand it's a big issue for a lot of people, especially for people who maybe present in a way that isn't necessarily congruent with the people who would usually use those facilities. But for me, I can use those facilities, male toilets, and I can get away with it, and nobody thinks anything of it. But it does cause me uncomfortableness every time I walk up to the door and see that male sign. It's that little bit of, that doesn't represent me. Why am I walking through a door where my picture isn't on that door? So it sucks, but I will use it because there's no other options technically available, no useful options. Having said that, when I do use the male toilets, I have constructed quite a few rules to get myself through that experience. So for instance, if I'm going to the toilet and I notice that other people are walking towards the toilet at the same time, I will veer off and come back a little bit later on. The same token, if I get to the door and I hear people inside, or if I go inside and there's people in the toilet, I will, not in the bowl, that would be weird, but if there's people using the facilities, I will generally double back and come back later on. I'm okay if it's just me in there, so it's not a pleasant experience, but then again, why would it be pleasant for anyone going to the toilet surrounded by other people? That's just a completely weird concept when you think about it. Change rooms and things like that, like at the gym, for example, are a similar experience. I was really uncomfortable as a kid having to get changed for PE, physical education, sports, whatever you call it. Or if I went swimming and had to use the change rooms there, once again, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I belonged there, as well as all the other little issues about, not really wanting to strip off or get naked or whatever when you've got this like adolescent body or whatever. It's a minefield anyway. But add a bit of gender stuff on top of that and it's yucky. Even when I go to the gym, I won't use the change rooms. I won't use the change rooms like afterwards to have a shower and get changed. I'll generally just leave and wait till I get home if I'm covered in sweat, but I'd rather go home and have a shower than to do it in that particular space. And once again, no useful gender neutral options. In regards to filling in forms, this is a problem for all of us, I'm sure. I don't mind putting male on a form if I believe that they're asking for my physical sex. And if that's relevant and necessary, that's not a problem. If I believe that they've got it mixed up and they're asking for gender, then I feel pretty uncomfortable putting an M down or writing male or ticking that male box. If it's an official or a medical or a government form, then of course I'm going to put what my physical sex is because that's kind of what I have to do. If I have the choice in the matter though, if it does give me the option to leave it blank, if it's a physical form, leave it blank and move on, or if it's an online form or something and allows you to move on beyond that question, then I'll usually leave it blank. I personally have not come across any examples of forms where there's been an other box or a blank space to fill in your own gender, or even list things like transgender or intersex or anything. I have heard of those things. I haven't personally signed one or had to fill one in myself. I'd find that quite interesting if I did. But yeah, if it lets you progress without using it, then that's what I'll do. If it forces you to choose, depending on what it is, I will either do it if it's something official and necessary. If not, if it's a social networking site or something online or something just for the hell of it, then if it makes me choose that, I'm not going to choose either option and I will just not use that product or service or sign up for whatever. And that's unfortunate for me and it's unfortunate for them. I kind of think, at least with the examples of sort of, social networking sites or things on the web, like why are they asking that question anyway? What does your physical sex matter when you're separated by the internet? If it's like a social networking site, Facebook, Google, whatever, like people can see your photo, most likely they already know you, and so that they can assume your gender or whatever, like from that, or they may know your gender. There's no reason to put like male or female. I don't see how that's relevant at all unless it's some sort of dating site, and even then that's not going to really work out for us either. So if they're asking those questions and categorising people that way, then it must be because for marketing or advertising reasons. So I figure they like to know how many males and females are using their service to tailor it and cater it to the sexes, to bring more people in, to make more money, and to probably push advertising in your browser window so that you will buy stuff. And they think that by matching this sort of stuff up with whether you put an M or an F on their form, then somehow they're going to target that correctly and they're going to get more sales. So that's bullshit in my opinion, because one, it's bullshit. It's not going to work. But if I put male, I'm not going to really necessarily appreciate what they push towards me. It's not necessarily giving them the correct demographics, so their information is now useless. And yeah, and it sucks if I'm not going to use their product or service or sign up for whatever it is because they're not giving an option for me to put other or genderqueer or gender neutral or non-binary, or if they haven't thought of a creative way of doing that without asking for that binary gender option, then that's them losing out technically, essentially. The other thing too is like with some social networking sites and stuff, it makes you put in a gender or asks you to put in a gender, but then it gives you the option of not displaying it. So what's the point of that? What do they need to know that for? And I guess that just comes back to the marketing thing. Anyway, that's my rant about forms. It sucks. And that's something that I wish I was more vocal about and had some better ideas for, because it would be good for people in my situation or our situation or anyone who identifies differently and doesn't fit into that binary model, to be able to have the freedom to express themselves and not either be forced into a box or have to feel like they can't participate in something. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what everyone else says about those particular issues, because I think we all are probably unique and have our own unique opinions and our unique struggles, and yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, okay, that's me. See you next week.